Hello and welcome. Coming up on the Mum Show today, we are talking about parental anger and how we can help ourselves when we're starting to feel cross. So grab yourselves a cup of tea, make yourselves comfortable, and let's start the show. Hello and welcome back to the Mum Show. Today I've got with me child therapist Emma Brown, Pastor Clare Hooper.
Hello.
And we're going to be having a chat about parental anger. What we can do in those really difficult situations when you just feel like your blood is boiling. We've just all been there. I think nervous laughter like, this morning.
No, we've all been there.
Oh,
haven't we?
totally.
Yeah.
I think I've said this before on this show, but our children, I think, tend to bring up and trigger the most powerful emotions in us.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, of love, of
Yeah.
pride, of admiration, but also of frustration and anger.
Absolutely. And usually when you're parenting, you know, often we can be tired, we can be multitasking.
Yeah,
We can
definitely.
have other dynamics going on. We're managing needs that our children have, but we've also got in the back of our minds all the other jobs that need to happen.
Absolutely.
Like we can be quite vulnerable in that sense to getting cross.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a little story of, I've just remembered actually when we were thinking earlier about stories. My eldest is usually really, really calm. She's the laid back one.
Right.
So she very rarely was quite naughty as a child. She just kind of was quite compliant, really. But there was one occasion, and it was on Boxing Day, so it was on Christmas, and it was one of the only times that our big, fat, wider family all get together, which is a fairly stressful experience anyway. So as you were saying, Marina, already I was kind of feeling a little bit kind of stressed about it. And I had bought this outfit for her, beautiful little outfit with a little gingerbread man on it. And she was about 2.5 and she just refused to wear it. She absolutely refused to wear it. I tried everything. I was pleading with her. I was bribing with her. I was doing all the things that I usually say not to do with a child. I tried everything and it just didn't work, and I have never ever felt so cross and so angry about something. When I look back now, it was so insignificant, but I think when I think about it, it wasn't just, maybe she was picking up on my stress as well, and my frustration, but it was just incredible. So the level of my anger just did not match the reality of the situation at all. It was crazy.
Crazy. What about you, Claire? Have you got any? Have you got any? Have you got any you're willing to share? That's more to the point.
Oh, lots. Like, I am a more a slow burn, and then like I can carry it a bit passive, like kind of person. But there's some things that trigger my anger. Embarrassment is one of them. Like, it's huge for me when I get embarrassed. I don't know what to do with it, and I'll often like have an outburst. Is that common?
Absolutely. Yes.
So in the morning, I'd put an Instagram post out about my family, and I'd hardly ever do that. And I'm like, honestly, it was starting the day wrong just by doing that. I was so proud about something that I'd done as a mum, and I was like, ugh, this is just heading somewhere. So that had been out for a little while, and then, which is what caused the embarrassment when this situation happened. And then I'm at work and I get a FaceTime from one of my children, and I'm in a meeting, a room full of people, and meeting just ended, and I'm like happily going, hey, my son's FaceTiming me, how are you?
How connected we are.
And he just starts shouting down the phone, he's gonna kill me. I'm like, who's gonna kill you? Nobody's gonna kill you, you're fine. Anyway, I was so embarrassed because obviously everybody in the room heard the fact that my kids were they were at each other. They were one had barricaded themselves in the bathroom, one had barricaded themselves in the bedroom, one was like elbow in, and by the time we got home, the door was off its hinges. It was a full on, and I was so, actually, I wanted to make sure they were safe, but I was so embarrassed and I was so angry. So on the journey home, I just was I could feel myself just about to pop. And so when I went in, I actually was able to calm myself down, but just that feeling of rage and of the embarrassment of it and how they'd let me down. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And really, it's just brothers and sisters. And when we got home, they'd all dramatised it. And actually, we worked it out and it was fine. And I fixed the doorway eventually.
And every parent in that room can relate to those moments of embarrassment, can't they?
Absolutely.
That's the thing. I think I had a really, really irrational, angry moment. Really irrational, because my daughter was sleeping in my bed, and I'm not very good at night. My blood pressure drops a lot, and so I'm not very coherent. Like I make really crazy decisions when I'm laying in bed, and I just never get in bed with me, Emma. Basically at night time, stick to your own room. So basically it was just she was sleeping in bed with me, and she kept turning and turning, you know, like children do, which I hadn't realised was a childhood thing, that they move so much in bed. And we'd co-slept lots of times before, but it's always in the morning, so I'm kind of in a happy place, and I'm like, yeah, come for a snuggle. I've had my sleep. I'm ready for you, and I would sleep them quite happily down at night. Again, I'm awake, but this was like in the middle of the night, really in a total sleep zone, and she kept spinning and spinning and spinning, and I thought she was doing it deliberately. I was like convinced that she was just kicking me and kicking me and kicking me, and I just got up really irrationally and I went, I can't take it anymore. I just can't take it anymore. You are keeping me awake. And I did this really long dramatic monologue, and I'm like, I haven't slept. You're 3 years old and you don't even understand what I'm saying. I turned the light on and she was fast asleep. She's like, I was like, oh, this is just getting ridiculous. I was like, right, get her out the bed. It must have been like a strange night when my husband was away or something. And I was just like, it just pushed me to like...
I know, I've been there when you feel like they're doing this on purpose. And you think, I know they're not, but lots within you, once you get to that point of like, frustration, that you're so angry you can't actually see it.
But we're not thinking, are we? And I think that's the important part, because we often talk about kind of losing our temper, of losing control. Another way of thinking about it is something that I think we talked about in the last season, which was flipping your lid. Would it be all right for me to just explain that a little bit?
Every time you say it, I'm like, oh yeah, I need to learn this.
This is the hand model of the brain. And we can all do this, and we can all actually, it's sometimes really helpful for us as parents to be able to do this, to help our kids understand what's going on when they get angry or when they get kind of emotionally dysregulated. So if you kind of hold your hand like this, put your thumb in between, inside, and then the fingers over, and that represents your brain. So you've got the brain stem here, which is your spinal cord, brain stem. This part is the internal part, the really early brain, the downstairs brain, part of the brain that's developed first. It's developed during pregnancy, and babies are born with this part of the brain, and it's called the limbic system. And there's a little bit in the limbic system called the amygdala, which is where all those big emotions are, your emotional regulation is kind of stored, really, is where your big impulses are. And then over childhood, as children grow, they start to be able to, this is the top bit of the brain, this is the cortex. The prefrontal cortex is where our ability to kind of think rationally, to kind of calm ourselves down, to kind of, I suppose, just all the areas of the brain where we're able to kind of just think logically, really. And what happens is that when we're triggered by something, the top part of our brain, it's literally like it flips off. So and that's why it feels so irrational.
It's like
physically.
Boom, you feel like...
Doesn't physically.
I've always wondered that. I'm like, does it?
It's I suppose if you kind of think of it as a disconnect.
Okay.
So because this part of your brain, because your emotions are involved, is firing, it's almost like this part of the brain is disconnected momentarily. And we often talk...
You feel it.
Yeah, we do feel it.
Yeah, you feel it.
And it's about... So if you kind of think about, this is the red zone area, and then when the lid comes back on, you're back in the green zone, so you're back able to... So a bit like you, that journey home did allow you probably just enough space to put your lid back on.
And then we were able to laugh about it.
Exactly.
But I think if I'd have been there, I would have been up there with them,
I was thinking that. It was a good job he did use the FaceTime, wasn't it?
It's interesting though, because when you think about, so that bottom part of the brain is all your, like, what you need.
Yes.
So your breathing and your...
It's your how your body gets regulated, all the kind of physical...
Yeah. So when you think about that, if as a mum you're tired or you're lacking sleep or you've not eaten or you've not had a drink, then would that make that lower part of the brain more vulnerable because your survival and you're looking after yourself isn't there?
Absolutely, it does do. And I also think when we think about what are the things that do cause us to flip our lids, I think there's two main things. There's the kind of internal stresses. So these are the things that actually are sometimes buried quite deep. So sometimes there are often things from our own childhood. A bit like you've said, Claire, that you know that somehow getting into that place of shame or embarrassment is a huge trigger for you. And that could be, who knows where that comes from.
Something where it was first opened in my life.
Absolutely. So it's something that you're perhaps more sensitive to. For me, often it's when I don't feel kind of heard or listen or understood or listened to by my kids, when I feel like my kids are ignoring me. And I'm sure that I do know where that stems from. But those are the internal stresses, and then we've got the external things. So we've got the kind of environmental factors that are going on in the here and now, and that could be things like, we talk about a stress bucket, don't we? Things that if you've had a really long day at work and you're depleted, you've not eaten yet, you know that you've got 100 more things to do yet, but that your kids aren't doing as they're told. It's those sorts of, they're not brushing their teeth or getting into bed when they should do. All those sorts of things, those are the external. So it's recognising that, is it an external thing that's going on, or is it an internal thing that's going on?
It's so interesting. I think it's knowing what your trigger points are, isn't it? And just being really conscious of that. I know that for me, it's messy bedrooms. But basically, it's anything that is chaos. So dirty teeth, messy bedrooms, not eating properly, not sleeping properly. It's that thing that I need to know that they are calm, regulated and healthy. I just, not calm, because we can have fun and they can, I don't mind that, and I can get, if they're angry, that's cool, they need to be angry. But I just need to feel like they are being properly nourished and they're in a healthy environment. And I think part of that for me comes from the fact that actually I'm not always in a good place, and so I might oversleep, or I might not have made dinner, or I haven't organised things. And I know if I'm not organised and I see that impacting the children's place of peace, then I get really angry, and then I start to feel sort of, and I guess the anger's at myself, but they would read it as an anger at them, I think, at that point. So I have to be really careful of that.
Peace is something you have to make for. Jesus doesn't say blessed are the peacekeepers, blessed are the peacemakers. And peacemakers, when you see them across the world making for peace, they discuss it, they negotiate, they fix in boundaries, they create space for peace to happen. And if you want peace in your life, if you want to grow it as a fruit, you have to put in boundaries and margins, because that's very often what happens when we've got our children, and we've not got the space, have we, to allow that peace to really grow and develop in our lives. And like you said, it's not about being a quiet, calm person. Some of us are not born like that. I wasn't born like that. I'm loud at times. It's about having an internal peace that only Jesus can help us, and we have to create space for it.
Absolutely, I think that's true. But I also think that just what you were saying is really true as well. It's often the things that, and sometimes it's not necessarily. Anger is what we see. Anger is what is expressed. Underneath the anger is often, you'll find, it's fear.
That's so true.
So for you,
that's really true.
The kind of, because you know that when you feel chaotic and you're disorganised, and that's something in yourself that you kind of maybe strive to change or want to be different. When you see it in your children, there's this, no, I don't want you to be like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it comes out in frustration and anger.
And I think for me, I've had to consciously make decisions. This is a pressure point for me. How am I going to handle that? Like for my daughter, I've had to say to her sometimes, I can't be in this room right now. I'm going to come back when I know that this has just been a little bit sorted. And sometimes I get in and I help her and we do it together. But because she is just, there's stuff, she's so cluttered, and I can tidy that room out and it will just build back up. And she's like me. That's the thing, she's just like me. I'm really cluttered and I constantly get... So it's that sort of thing where I've had to really consciously say, right, this is a stressful moment for me, so I'm going to make sure that in that moment I'm going to go in prepared, expecting that this is going to trigger me, and I'm going to say to her, or I'll have to change the way I'm going to say it, or I'll prepare it. And the other thing is that just making a daily habit of catering for the fact that if we don't do certain things, I'm leaving myself vulnerable. So say, when we get up in the morning, we all make our bed. And then straight away we're starting the day. And I think sometimes if we know there's trigger points in our anger, you have to actually almost, I know the ideal thing is to go and really heal that and explore that, but we can help ourselves out.
Definitely.
Like accommodating life. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Would you like to hear from the children?
Yes, definitely.
They're not mine, I didn't risk it. Let's take a look at the kids.
And action! Something that makes my parents angry is when I don't go to bed on time.
When I change the channel of the TV when they were watching it and they're just going to make my breakfast.
When my parents get angry, they do this expression.
Well, once when my mum got angry is when I put salt and pepper in a coffee and she made this expression.
What I'm thinking when my mum's angry at me, I'm thinking, oh no, I'm in deep, deep trouble.
I'm just gonna walk away from this situation. Then my mum starts shouting at me saying, Nathan, you shouldn't have done that. And then I realised, oops, knocks over a coffee.
It probably takes 10 minutes because we normally would get sent up to our bedroom sometimes to cool down. So while we're gone, my mum would normally calm down after I'd gone up and put a timer on.
How do you feel inside when you know that you've made one of your parents angry?
I feel inside really bad for myself because I've done something bad and it's not right to do something bad.
I just feel a bit annoyed that I've done something wrong. I feel annoyed with myself. A bit weirded out because I don't realise what I've done until I actually look at what I've done. So say I've spilt a glass of water. Oh, that's what I did. When my mum's angry, it takes her about 5-10 minutes to chill out.
How do you try and repair your relationship so you make friends with your parents again or put things right?
I clean it up. If I spilt a glass of water maybe, I'd just clean it up and it'd take me 2 minutes, then that might repair the relationship. I think the negative side of being angry is just you smash a lot of things, you be really angry.
And you kick your sister maybe, or you kick whatever around you, or you throw the thing that might be in your hand.
And when you're at home, you normally get sent up to your room for maybe 6, 7, 8 minutes.
To cool, just to cool off for, say, 10 minutes. I'd like my mum and dad to say, if they're getting angry, just say please to me, and then if I don't listen, then just give me a warning, the consequence, what might happen if I don't listen to them at all.
I'd just like my mum to give me a few warnings, so maybe 3 warnings, then third strike you're out, and then you go up to your bedroom for 10 minutes to cool off.
Do you know, I know the mum of the girl is a friend of mine. You know her as well,
Yeah.
Claire. She's a good friend, and do you know, she's so peaceful. She is like the most peaceful mother I've ever hung out with. I'm with her, I've been with her and her kids a lot, and she's just like the most gracious,
Yes.
calm, relaxed, patient, and I'm like, she still gets angry. It's not just me. Even Natalie gets cross.
It's not wrong to be angry though, is it?
No, it's not.
The Bible says it's just in your anger do not sin.
Yeah.
And it gives you a ways out, it gives you ways to respond to that, which is why I think it's interesting you say anger's not the root, it's usually something else.
Yeah.
And if you can get to that and try and keep a short account, you know, did you really have a bad day with your kids, or was it a 5 minutes? that they were bad and you milked it all day? I always ask that question, you know, have I let this affect my whole day and burn within me and not forgive them and not keep a short account? But the anger bit of it, that just tells you what's going on underneath, doesn't it?
Yeah. It does, but I think the danger is when we don't tune into that, and we don't kind of recognise the warning signs, and we don't know what our triggers are, because actually for a child, when a parent is angry, you know, if you think about it, if they're in a kind of, you know, often we're angry with our kids because they're dysregulated in some way, either because they're misbehaving or because they've been fighting with a sibling. So actually, when we're meeting our downstairs brain, we're often meeting their downstairs brain, which is the opposite of what they need in that moment. So what we're doing by becoming angry is that we're almost accelerating and magnifying their experience of that fear. And they're like much more likely to get more fearful and more rageful themselves. So we know it doesn't work. And we don't want our children to just comply out of fear for punishment. Because that's, you know, that's the opposite of them being able to learn from themselves, learn that sense of self-control. What are we modelling to our children if we are losing it and flipping our lids at them all the time? So yes, the anger itself isn't wrong, but we've got to recognise it. We've got to at least attempt to kind of start to tune into ourselves and recognise, and what does it feel like in our bodies? And we can help our children recognise that too. What does it feel like? So we know usually, I mean, sometimes people say, oh, you know, I just see the red mist and I just flip out. It's often not the case. There's often a few warning signs if we're prepared to tune in. You know, your heart rate's beating faster. You can feel yourself. Maybe your fists are starting to clench. You're starting to feel hot. And all of those things, if we can kind of tune into our bodies and what feels like's going on, it helps us kind of give us an idea of how we can then manage it.
God designed us to live as powerful people, and those things that make us feel powerless often simmer under the surface for a long time. He's made us so wonderfully complex, hasn't he? And actually these things, the way that he made the brain, are there for good. The way our body works and our mind works, it's for good. But unless, like you say, we learn to self-reflect and know what our triggers are, and then look for God, the ways that God has given us to replace those maybe lies that we're believing, or maybe some of our needs are not being met, or unresolved issues that we've got going on, or things that track back to our childhood. So what we do a lot of the time when we pray with people with prayer ministry, where we take them back to an issue. When was that doorway of fear first opened in your life? Is there anybody you need to forgive in that moment to help release that sense of like worthlessness or abandonment or fear or anguish or anxiety around that situation? And then work out how to replace, if you've got into any anger habits, how to replace them with more joyful, peaceful, self-controlled parts of you instead.
It's, when you think about it from that impact that it has, like you're saying, from what's caused that anger within you, when was that doorway opened? What doorways are opening up for our children when we're losing it? Because I think, you know, most parents, we deeply want to connect with our kids. It's how we've been designed. You know, God is a connective, relational, loving God. We are made in his image, and we want, as mums and dads and grandparents, we want desperately to connect with our children. And actually, when we get angry, it goes against everything that we desire. It goes against everything that's inside us. And I sometimes feel there's that guilt or that frustration and that double dose of anger that follows when you just think to yourself, that's not what I want to build. There's that incredible proverb that it says, a wise woman builds her house, but with the same hands tears it back down again. And it is that thing where you're thinking, I've worked so hard to build this, but I just keep tearing it down. And we don't want to be in that place. And we don't want our kids to then continue a cycle because they're feeling as though, you know, Mum loses it at me and I'm in this place, because it must conjure up some of that fight, flight or fear.
Absolutely, and it only breeds more anger, so the cycle goes on. So we become angry with our kids then become angry, we then become more angry at ourselves because we've lost it, and the cycle just continues. So we've got to take responsibility.
Yeah.
We are the adults, we're the parents.
Yeah.
Yes, it's normal. Yes, our kids are going to absolutely push our buttons and give us the biggest triggers ever. But it is the responsibility has to lie with us as parents to kind of keep it in check as much as possible.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, as my kids have gotten older, the things that I've carried over the years that I feel like they must remember that moment when I absolutely lost it. They don't. So in that moment, you're carrying the guilt after it as well, and then that leads to more shame and then more potential anger and all these things we tie ourselves up in knots in, and we just don't live our lives.
Yeah.
I remember a time, I don't quite remember what had happened, but I remember my mum being cross with me in the morning, and I don't quite remember what the exchange was about. But I remember going to school feeling upset because it's so unlike my mum to be like that. But what I remember as my strongest memory of that was actually when I got home, she massaged my shoulders and whispered sorry, and that is the strongest memory I have. It isn't actually
Powerful.
that moment of confrontation. My strongest memory is that overwhelming sense of reconciliation of, oh, mum loves me, we're good, we're back. And I think actually as parents, we don't have to be a victim and say, this has happened, I've ruined it. You know, Jesus teaches that to us all the time. There's always a way back.
So right.
And you know, it's that repair work that can be done as well that's just so important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what kind of, if we're able to recognise that and do the repair, which is the most significant part of the process, then healing can occur, and actually those pathways in the brain don't, you know, it's almost like that is more powerful than the potential damage of getting angry.
Yeah.
So there is always hope, there's always a way back, and if we're able to be kind of reflective enough to be able to kind of step back from it, see where we've gone wrong, but then take active steps. Don't just brush it under the carpet. Don't just try and, you know, kind of move on. Actually, it's so important that children make sense of what's just happened to them, because they've been in a scare, you know, they've perhaps, you know, they've felt fear. They need to be able to understand what happened there. You know, why did mummy just suddenly get really scary?
Yeah.
So if we can allow ourselves to really be honest with them about what happened and say sorry and repair the relationship.
It's that love casts out all fear, isn't it?
Yeah, perfect love casts up. Yeah, and perfect love is that, isn't it?
I think one of the things that really has helped me was when it was one Easter actually, and I was really reflecting on the cross, and I was thinking about how when Jesus was on that cross, we weren't in a great place. He didn't go to the cross with us perfect. He went to the cross when we were in chaos and when we were in sin. And the vision that held him there was a vision of reconciliation. It was a vision of his children, the Father's children, being back and reunited with him. And that really impacted me one year, and I thought, I'm going to put this into my parenting, and I'm going to have that vision of the cross every time my kids start to lose it. And I'm so tempted to join their chaos. Instead, I'm going to bring the peace that Jesus brought me, even when I'm in chaos, even when I was behaving badly. He was willing to go to that place. And that change actually really helped in my parenting. I was like, these children are my gifts. They are my gifts, and I'm going to hold that vision of reconciliation. I'm going to hold that vision of unity and love, even when you physically can't see it. It really helped. But what do you think are some of the things that parents can do if they're recognising this? What practical things can we offer people to just... Because like you say, we need to be powerful.
Yeah.
I'd say, you know, very quickly, if we can kind of really recognise what those triggers are, recognise the early warning signs, do something at that point, do something beforehand. And that could be, we often say, you've got to move it to lose it.
Yeah.
So try and, move it, don't lose it. So take yourself into a different environment, go outside, get some take a breath of fresh air, glass of water often helps. Anything that's 10 deep breaths. Kind of just hand on the chest, hand on the belly. Just soothe yourself. Anything that's going to take you back into that kind of green zone place.
Yeah.
Again, love that God has given us ways to be able to physically. We get stuck with these things in our mind and think it's out of control. And yet our body helps us to regulate itself as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've blogged about this actually. We could add it onto the notes.
It's on the website.
Yeah.
It's there now. I've done it in my head. I've put it on. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Claire says, do head over to our website at promisecollective.co.uk, and she has offered some great wisdom, because I remember the blog. It will be there for you that can help you if you're feeling anxious or angry. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to catching up with you very soon.
Hello parents, don't forget to say hello. We're at promisecollective.co.uk. Bye!